Marvel's visual effects staff airs their grievances as Ms. Marvel's first season concludes and The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power gets an official teaser trailer. I'm Darius Delsoin.
And I'm Joe Acierno. This is Cinema Unchained. Welcome back to the one and only Cinema Unchained podcast. We've got a great show lined up for you today. Now, before we get into the trailer for The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, if you haven't yet, if you have not gotten a chance to yet, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to get all notifications for more fun, honest, and engaging talks on movies, TV, and everything in between. Now, before we get into the latest revelations coming out of Marvel Studios in terms of some of their visual effects workers, The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, a.k.a. Amazon's Lord of the Rings TV series, released its first real official teaser trailer this past week, and set thousands of years before the stories of The Hobbit and the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. Middle-earth faces a long-feared reemergence of evil, and that's pretty much all that seemed to be revealed so far. This was just a teaser, so there hasn't been given away in terms of story, but I am wondering how this will be able to differentiate and/or even live up to The Lord of the Rings. I can't say I'm disinterested. I am impressed by the size and scale of the show. I'm interested in watching it, but I don't know. What are you thinking so far, Darius?
I am very mixed, if not a bit more on the oh boy, mainly because of just how people are reacting to this. And I want to stress that I like Lord of the Rings. I like the movies, I like one of the books because my dad's a big Lord of the Rings fan. And so, I like Lord of the Rings. I do want to read more of it, but I've realized that even with the show and as much little knowledge I have, but just how people are reacting to it, this may not be the Lord of the Rings that they're familiar with, considering they've made quite a few changes to even some certain characters, certain races, and people are not too fond and happy of that. So it's interesting how we're seeing this again from people taking these popular adaptations. Again, this is Lord of the Rings of all things, just like how Star Wars is Star Wars. And they're just completely almost ignoring the books and everything. And even in the Lord of the Rings, I can think with how they describe some of the elves and even certain races where they're typically, I think it was elves specifically, where it's like they're very almost white, albino with platinum blonde hair, blue eyes, and they're not doing that all too much. Yeah. So it's interesting how we're just seeing this over and over again. Where it's just like they're just taking an IP, a famous IP, and doing completely their own thing. Now, I'm fine if you want to do something different with it, but you have to do something different within the confines of the lore and the story that's already established. It's established for a reason, so don't try to change a race or something or whatever for the sake of. Unfortunately, I have to say this for diversity pushing, because that's just what it feels like, and it doesn't feel as genuine as it should be, because this is in Lord of the Rings, this franchise, the books have been written years ago, so it was a whole different era, and you're trying to modernize it when it doesn't need to be, because that's just how it was written and portrayed and etc. So I'm a bit mixed.
Yeah.
It looks like fans are mixed. And I do agree with you. The visuals are absolutely stunning, but for some reason, it doesn't have that Lord of the Rings, even that flair from the movies, sort of. If
all three of which are masterpieces. You look back at the original trilogy. Like, imagine taking that big of a gamble, right? Because those three movies were filmed back to back and released back to back, 2001, 2002, 2003. Especially back then too, to take on something like that is just absolutely massive, and to kind of play upon what you're saying as far as quote modernizing it. I just think it's sad how when we think of modernizing, it's a lot of basically diversity pushing, like you were saying before, because at the end of the day, the idea that an audience can only relate to a character because they look like them, right, or are of the same race or background as them, is bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. You know, the biggest thing that I can think of in terms of that was when the movie Moonlight came out a few years ago, right? And again, Moonlight is an excellent movie. It's an excellent movie. The first two acts in particular are brilliant. The third act, like, you know, that third part of the main character story, like, it drags a little bit and it is a little anticlimactic towards the end, I feel. But like overall, I think it's a terrific film. But the idea that you can only relate to someone because of like what they look like or like certain orientations is a line of bull, because the main character, Chiron, you know, he starts out as this shy kid that, like, you know, doesn't really know how to stand up for himself, and he becomes a stronger person as he grows up and progresses into the man he ends up being. Now, again, like, obviously, you know, he's black and he's also gay. I'm neither, but at the same time, obviously, I'm neither, but like at the same time, like, I was able to relate to that aspect of a story of him becoming a stronger and more confident person as he grew up. So, again, forcing certain castings and, like, you know, changing the race of like all these different characters, like, I just don't get it. You know, it just doesn't seem to be as productive as the people in charge of this are really believe, or like are making this out to be.
Exactly. And it's like, and when I was watching the video and I even saw some of the comments, you know, people are not too fond of it. They're like, this isn't J.R.R. Tolkien, this isn't their writing. And even people have even went out and said that, like, even some of the dialogue didn't feel as authentic as it should be. So, and again, that's them. They're very going in deep. I understand that because I'm a comic nerd and I go in deep with certain things too. So, you know, I respect that. But, you know, this, it just happens time and time again. And for me, when I was watching it, a part of me was reminded of Star Wars yet again.
So like, when you say that, like, what about this reminded you of
Star
Star
I was
Wars?
just about to get into that. So like, mainly when I say that, it's considering how I felt and even others have felt with Last Jedi and even Rise of Skywalker, and certain even other Star Wars IP and properties in multimedia, such as Book of Boba Fett and etc. Lord of the Rings feels like it's going down the very same similar path, when it comes to just that aspect of people disliking it and lore changes. You know, just like in the show, and even same thing's happening with the Game of Thrones show, that's new show that's coming out, and that sort of thing. So
I forgot about that.
It's that thing where there's more dislike and pushback against these type of changes that are happening. And I think you're seeing it more and more often from fans. Now, obviously, hardcore fans are very loud, but at the same time, it's something that they're passionate about, which I understand. And the fact that some of these companies are just completely doing something different and not even paying attention. And I even saw a comment of someone saying, yeah, they changed even two of the characters. They swapped them. And I was like, and again, I don't know too much about that, but I've been seeing even some people are saying to two of the characters, like Galadriel and I forgot the other, and Elrond, yeah, right? How those characters are to them are like they're swapped. It was the other way around in the books. And I was like, oh. So when you see that, and it's like, and seeing how people are pushing certain narratives today, it's interesting. I want it to be good. I'm definitely gonna check it out. I want to at least try to see some form of entertainment value at the very least. Again, visually it looks stunning. But that's like the only good thing I can say at the current moment, because again, like you said, they didn't reveal a lot of the story, so we have to wait and see.
So do I think, and again, you know, diversity, shoehorning aside, do I think this has potential to be exciting and engaging? I honestly still do. I still do. But, you know, I think the phrase that you used in the past, cautiously optimistic, that's where I'm at right about now.
Yep.
But again, we'll just have to wait and see. Like I said, I'm impressed by the size and scale of the show. If I'm not mistaken, this is like one of the biggest, if not the biggest, television series budgets of all time. So it just makes me wonder too, right? Like, going back to what you were saying as far as like the blowback so far from fans after this trailer was released. You know, I can't help but wonder at this sort of gamble too. Like, is this is a gamble this big going to pay off the way it did
Mm-hmm.
for the original film trilogy? Makes you wonder, and makes you think like, oh, what's going to happen with Amazon should this not, be as successful as they hope for it to be.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think it'll like tank the company overall, but it will definitely hurt its reputation, because think about it too. Like, Amazon really only came onto the movie scene, the film and TV production scene, in the last few years, and they've had a lot of great hits. If I'm not mistaken, Marvelous Miss Maisel is an Amazon series, and my parents watched that, and from the snippets I've seen, it's a great show. I think it was a movie that came out from Amazon a few years ago, Manchester by the Sea. Phenomenal movie, phenomenal film. But again, as with every other media production company, they're not always going to get it right. And sometimes when you don't get it right, there's, it's going to hurt. It's really going to hurt. But, so again, we'll just have to wait and see. The series does premiere on Amazon September 2nd. So I'm still going to be looking forward to watching it. At the same time, I still have my reservations with it. So for all of you, what are your thoughts on the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power? Like, do you agree with any of our arguments that we made? Are we being a little bit too harsh, a little bit too skeptical too early on? Leave your thoughts wherever it is that you can. And if you like this discussion about the new Lord of the Rings trailer and you want more like it, you know what to do. Subscribe and hit the bell wherever it is that you can, whether on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, before we cap off the show with our review of Ms. Marvel, I'm still taking things in the Marvel end of things. As of late, visual effects workers from Marvel Studios, or I guess former visual effects workers, or if they're current, I'm not really sure. They've been coming out and saying and complaining about the working conditions at Marvel Studios, right? Darius, if I'm not mistaken, like they complained about long hours, being overworked, was underpaid mentioned in there as well?
Unrealistic
deadlines.
deadlines. Yeah.
Yes, that was another one that I forgot. Yeah, which is really interesting because, like, if you really think about this, right? The visual effects quality in like a Marvel and much of the Marvel installments overall have been declining fairly rapidly over the last number of years. I'd say since Avengers Endgame, right? And it's like, oh, like you're killing your workers, and if you're gonna, and it's not even good. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, like, you have to treat your workers well, but like, if you can't even get like, good quality out of them, like, you're really just failing on all fronts. It's kind of sad when you think of this and you think back to like how the VFX quality was in a lot of like the earlier Marvel films. Definitely not all of them, but a lot of them. You think of Iron Man, think of Avengers, and again, all the way up to Avengers Endgame. So it's kind of sad to see.
It is. When I saw this, I was like, man, this has to be the worst time for this stuff to happen, to come out. Because it's like, and I've made this tweet before, and I was like, yeah, for me, as a fan of Marvel Studios, as a fan of Marvel, wanting to go see the movies, trying to want to support this, I will say, for me as a viewer, the visual effects quality, that is going down. You can tell, and even the story quality is going down. They're pumping so much content, and they're going to so many different studios and not using the same studios for a multitude of different projects that, like, it is showing. You cannot, and this overstressing in on these workers is unfortunate. Now, yes, one can argue that once you're in visual effects, this type of stuff can happen. Absolutely, I'm not denying that at all, that it can't happen at all. But just like that workload should be lessened, and the fact that you have some visual effects artists now basically saying, working for Marvel Studios, that brand, that title does not matter anymore to me as a VFX artist because of the stress and workload I've been going through. Some you hear some of them are pulling up almost all-nighters for like an entire week or that sort of thing. They can't see their families. And this reminds me of even the gaming industry when it comes to game development, where you have crunch time, which is basically almost the last couple months, finalizing the game, and people are going all in. Maybe sometimes even being forced to stay in the office. It's very similar in that regards. And I just think Marvel needs to lessen their workload a bit more when it comes to all this, because now it doesn't feel like a phase 1, 2, and 3 anymore. And what I mean by that is, especially in phase 1 and 2, where that phase 1 and 2 felt more story driven, and we want to produce good, try to produce at least really good stories for the overall narrative that we're doing. With this, it just feels like they're a content machine for Disney at this point, with a factory with very small like, and it's chaotic. And I understand, and I remember in an interview Kevin Feige was saying that, yeah, the theme in this phase is chaotic after Endgame, and it's like, but you can tell behind the scenes too. You can feel it. You can, like, the story quality just has not been there anymore. And the fact that, I might be teasing a bit into what we're going to be discussing in Ms. Marvel shortly. To me, and this is, again, my opinion, I think Ms. Marvel is the better of the MCU Disney Plus shows. That's just me. That's just me personally. And the fact that, and to me, that's already kind of a low bar, because a lot of the other MCU Disney Plus shows haven't really been that fulfilling. I'm not going to say good, but I'm going to say at least fulfilling, because of certain.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, because there is a difference. So it's like you can tell when something's like, good, like it's moderately entertaining, but like when you walk away after watching something, like really feeling something, that's fulfilling. So that's a great way to put that.
So I think Marvel Studios, they really need to tone it down a bit. Again, I don't think so, because San Diego Comic-Con is about to come out. That's probably going to be a hectic week for us too, because there's probably going to be a bunch of announcements. We'll have to wait and see. I really hope they dial it down a bit. And again, to me as a viewer, you can tell the visual effects quality is going down. You can just tell. And I think, for me, I think a prime example to say that the visual effects is going down, I think this movie has some of the worst ones in the MCU so far, at least this phase of the MCU. And this is my opinion, Thor: Love and Thunder. It's like a lot of some of the visuals just aren't as believable. And even there's another video where Taika Waititi's even crapping on the visual effects of his movie. I'm just saying that.
Like, not for nothing, if you're crapping on the visual effects of your own movie, you're the director. Where the hell were you?
That's another questionable thing. But yeah, so again, I think Marvel Studios just needs to dial it down a bit. I don't think they will, but it is what it is.
Yeah, because to kind of build on what you're saying before, like, just from an audience member, right? Like, the quality of, like, both, not just the visual effects, but the storytelling, like, seems to go down. Like, I think, honestly, if they just slowed down a bit, they didn't stretch themselves so thin, and they focused more on making each installment feel more individualistic. Some of them do, a lot of them don't. Then I think they would be so much better off. Because, again, just from a visual effects point of view alone, this franchise has fallen so far from Avengers Endgame to now what we saw with She-Hulk. I mean, that's gonna be rough to watch. That's gonna be very, very tough to watch. But again, I think it was just like one of those, like, too big to fail sort of things too. I mean, it kind of reminds me of Rome in a way. They got too big for their own good, and they didn't really focus on much, with the details and certain things, because they couldn't, because of how much they expanded and how they didn't have as much to back themselves up as they thought. This is what I see with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it's sad because, like, and this is something that I'll get into a little bit more when we review Ms. Marvel, but, like, the fact that the MCU, like, still has that hook, even if the quality of their individual installments are going down by and large, they still have that hook to make you want more and, like, look forward to more, even if there's a lot of things that are lacking. It's still kind of brilliant. But at the same time, again, like, the quality of these individual installments, again, so many of them feel very much of the same. And again, like, they really need to just slow down and take more time to just pump up these individual installments better, rather than just shooting them out there. Because, again, like, one of the reasons they're able to shoot them out there is because, as much as we complain about these individual installments, there's still a massive fan base that are just going to eat up whatever Marvel throws at them. So it's weird how much they're pumping out too much, but they're complacent in their own flaws. There's not enough of an incentive for them to really change their ways at this point. So I think I agree with you, at least for the time being, they're not going to change their strategy.
Yeah, and I think,
but it will
Yeah,
hurt them in the long
exactly.
run.
And again, even as a viewer myself, I feel a bit exhausted because it's like I'm trying to catch up with the MCU, but they're pumping out so much. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just like, geez. And now She-Hulk is
Yep.
coming out next month. And then this week coming up, or I think the week after, they're gonna be announcing more shows and movies in the MCU, most likely. Probably a Cap 4, X-Men. Like, there's already some promo stuff coming out, so it's like like just from even before, even right now as we're talking, before any new announcements from San Diego Comic Con, it's everything is just starting to feel rushed and overwhelming, and just needs to dial back a bit and just take your time a bit more, because in my opinion, Phase 4 is definitely one of the rushed phases of the MCU in a lot of aspects. So hope maybe the visual effects, maybe it'll change again. We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see.
But yeah, yeah, you're right. But at the same time, again, I think we have like a feeling as far as like where this is going to go. And again, for all of you that are with us, what are your thoughts on these new revelations coming out of Marvel Studios? Do you feel like this reflects a greater trend in the content that Marvel puts out overall? Leave your thoughts wherever it is that you can. And as per usual, if you like this discussion, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to get all notifications for more just like it, whether on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And now, to end off the show, we're going to be giving our series review of Ms. Marvel. Now, of course, this follows Jersey City teen and superhero mega fangirl Kamala Khan as she discovers superpowers of her own, and she struggles to fit into not just her own high school life, but at the same time struggle to fit in with her conservative Muslim family. Now, one of the things that I really did appreciate about this show, and again, there really is a lot that I do appreciate about this show, is the artistic style. I really, and we mentioned this, and I think we both mentioned this when we had our first impressions of the series. Again, like the whole comic book etchings and stylings. Again, I feel like that was really cool. It didn't feel like a gimmick because of how much of like a superhero nerd Kamala Khan is. So I felt like that felt, in line and in the context and confines of like the story, and it just seemed to make sense. Because like we were mentioning, or like we both mentioned before, like this stands out so much because so much of the Marvel Cinematic Universe looks the same. But at the same time, I do feel like that was lessened throughout the series. And I feel like the series would have benefited just a little bit more if it found clever ways, natural ways to incorporate that artistic style. Like
I could definitely understand that. For me, like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed the show. I think it was definitely one of the better MCU shows. That's just my opinion. And I agree that I like the style, especially in the beginning. It was very flashy, very vibrant, and even Edgar Wright-ish, very inspired by that too. And I really like that. And the more I think about it, I'm actually in a boat where I like it that they lessened it towards the end. I like that they lessened it. That's me, because it went from this fangirlish moment to now, all right, you really want to don a superhero? You got to get out of that mentality, especially later on when certain things hit the fan. Now, I don't think it was as well done necessarily, or at least I think one of the problems I think this show has that the other shows had as well, and I think it's a recurrent theme, is the villain problem. As a lot of people like to say, at least for me. But yeah, overall, I thoroughly enjoy the show. Very vibrant, very fun, definitely clever and witty and funny in certain moments. And definitely strung on those heartfelt moments when it was necessary. But yeah, that's just me overall, and I think the ending, the finale for me was one of the better finales. For sure. And so I think overall, as a character study, even of Ms. Marvel, and even as in her journey bringing people in, I liked it. I had a good time. There are still some changes from her comic lore I'm not too fond of. We'll probably get into that a bit later, but overall, I liked it more than I thought I would.
Now, one of the things I want to touch on, again, this kind of has like the last segment that we just talked about spill into here. Again, the visual effects. As much as I like the comic book etchings, and that is a good point as far as like the comic book etchings like being lessened throughout. Like there was a shift in, there's really a shift in her mindset, which warranted like the lessening of like that comic book style. So that is a good point. I didn't think of it there. I agree with you there. But in terms of like just visual effects overall, just from a CGI point of view, it still felt very clunky. Still felt very computerized. Like it was just too much for my liking. I didn't feel like the CGI felt like defined enough, and it just didn't. I just didn't like it. It just didn't hit my eye the right way.
It's weird because I liked it. I liked because it's weird because for me it was. I liked it and I didn't like it because in certain scenes it definitely felt and looked very computerized, and in other scenes because of how they shot it, or at least because it was dark, so the light, having bright light visual effects helps it out. But I don't know. I think her power set is what. I think her changing her the power set that she has makes it so vibrant and so edgy and or colorful that it can definitely deter from, I guess, the viewing experience because it's so much, and I do find it distracting at certain cases. So I will agree with on that point. But yeah, like in going to the villain problem, I was saying it was just that it felt like they were definitely going somewhere big. Towards the end, and this villain and her motivations just weren't completely there. I think it was, but then they kind of did a 180 in the finale when it comes to, and again, it's still suffering this villain problem, and so it didn't feel. This still felt fulfilling, but not as fulfilling enough compared to the other MCU finales, where those did not really feel fulfilling as much compared to this, and that's just me. So,
yeah. So at least from like a character point of view, most of the characters across the board are still very likable. They're still very empathetic. I'm still very much, invested in them, and I'm looking forward to seeing them play bigger roles in the Marvel Cinematic Universe going forward. Again, Kamala, her friend Bruno, and her father Yusuf are still by far my favorite characters. Still love all three of them. And again, like, I'm still rooting for one romantic dynamic against another romantic dynamic, but maybe that's just me. I don't want to give away too much because I don't think we're doing spoilers here. But is it just me? Like, I felt like her one friend, like her girlfriend, Nakia, I kind of felt like she just felt like a mouthpiece for certain political talking points. I didn't really feel like she did or served much else.
I felt that they wanted to do something with her because I think one of the things, and this is how I felt when watching it, okay, they wanted to show a rift of friendship because of a secret Ms. Marvel hid, right? As almost a consequence to her and her immaturities when it comes to the superhero stuff. But I think the reason why it didn't feel as impactful, or at least it felt tossed to the side, is because of the finale and just how quickly they had to get back together, and then all of a sudden they're buddy again. I think that's where it was, instead of really pulling on that string throughout it. It's like you kind of get a sense of it where she's trying to call her back and she's like no, or she's not answering. But then you had a whole other subplot, whole other thing they had to go into that took a backseat. And when the finale came, like I said, the finale definitely still felt rushed, like other finales in the MCU Disney Plus shows. But I think it was more fulfilling, at least for me, mainly because I felt like I was actually rooting for Kamala Khan to get where she needs to be in the end. And I think a certain post-credit scene really even made it further that I'm actually looking forward to that movie now. Just because of Ms. Marvel.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I wasn't Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not, like, super into that movie, but, like, I'm a little more into that movie now that I know that this storyline and these characters are going to be a part of it.
I am excited in regards to that. Again, I actually like Ms. Marvel as a comic fan. I like her character. I like that she's just fangirlish because I'm a fan. I'm not a fangirl. Obviously, I'm not a girl.
No, you.
But yeah, like I could relate to that, and maybe even having to grow out of that to a certain extent. You can still embrace it, but you still have to be a bit more especially over time. And if you are trying to be a hero or trying to do good, you have to make certain sacrifices. And I think this show,
And you have to be grounded in
exactly, and I think
reality
this
too.
show did a much better job and really did that much better, because even later on throughout the second half of the season, you're into a whole different area, and you can still see tension there, or at least distrust to a certain extent, and she has to like almost be better than that and grow from, or be much more than that, because the world is at stake is much larger than her. So I like the mentality shift, and I think you
Hmm.
can tell with Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan, overall, throughout the series. She still has her charm and her comedic sense, but you can definitely tell it was dialed down just a bit over time. Um,
She understands the weight of her situation just a bit more. Do I feel like there could have been like a little bit more of a development on the
mhm,
whole maturity end of things? I do, but there's still time to do that, and I feel like that could and will
mhm,
happen. I feel like in at least in the Marvels, right, the Marvels movie, like there has to be that moment where she has like that real hero defining moment, and I don't mean just like oh, you're doing good things for whoever. Like I feel like there has to be a time where she really makes like a sacrifice of some kind, or has something
yeah.
terrible really happen to her that she has to pull through and
Oh,
muscle through, like kind
yep.
of like with Spider-Man, right? Like one of the things that I hear about Spider-Man, the thing that makes Spider-Man Spider-Man is when he loses that mentor, that relative, that Uncle
Mhm,
Ben, that Aunt May. That's what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man. I feel like she has to go through something like
exactly.
that. She has, again, this story has that potential, but I feel like that has to happen in order for her to really step into that hero class
Yeah,
of character. And I really hope I
I think
really
it
hope
will
that
happen.
happens.
I think it could have happened in this season if maybe they given it two more episodes, possibly. Because I've been, these seasons are pretty
Hmm.
short. There's 6 episodes, sometimes a bit longer, like WandaVision, but WandaVision has a specific style, which is why it was longer. But I felt that this one, it could have used at
Hmm.
least a few more episodes just to either wrap things up, still keep it open ended for an upcoming movie, certain movie, but also really give Ms. Marvel that loss or a something so severe really happened to really kick her into grind. Like you said with Spider-Man, one of the great things about Spider-Man's story is that Peter's story and that Spider's story are so interconnected that something's going to happen to his personal life that affects him being Spider-Man. You know, and like we
Yep.
said, even in No Way Home, I think he finally does now with the loss of Aunt May. Like
Hmm.
that's equivalent to the loss of Uncle Ben. And so basically, I think Ms. Marvel
Hmm.
definitely needs that. It doesn't need to be a death, but something severe, and they need to take it as serious for that development to happen and really settle in on that. But yeah, overall, I thoroughly enjoyed the show. Really liked it. I'm excited for the
As
future
did I.
of this character in the MCU, even with a certain change in the end of the finale. That is very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Overall, I have to say the show was definitely well done. The action sequences were decent. There are times where it felt like a little bit too childish for my liking, but I'm like, you know what? I feel like it's a little bit acceptable, because more acceptable, because it's definitely aimed at a younger audience. I definitely appreciated details and portrayal of modern Muslim culture. Like it felt,
Mhm.
it felt natural. It felt authentic. But again, I'm not necessarily part of that world myself. I haven't really dived so much into it, but I definitely felt like there was an attempt, and at least felt right in the way that they portrayed that. Um, in terms of, again, the show's greatest strengths overall is definitely its
Absolutely.
characters. It's its character development more than anything. That's the thing that kept me coming back. Other than the fact that, like, we were going to talk about this on the show. The fact that actually kept me interested was the characters more than anything. The middle is definitely not as good as the opening act, but the
Mhm.
finale makes up for it. Not that the middle is bad. It's just like, there's just like a little bit of a decline, and like, interest and engagement. But like, again, it comes back, and it comes back very, very strong. Interesting lore. I would have liked
Yeah.
for them to dive a bit deeper into that, because I do kind of feel like we only got like a surface level, telling of that. But again, there's still time to do that too, so I'm not really so concerned about that. Left me wanting more. Interesting post credit scene, and even though like there's definitely been an overall decline of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this show shows
Mhm.
promise for the franchise.
Absolutely.
So now, just in terms of like the other Marvel Cinematic Universe shows, where do you think this ranks? Is this your favorite? Like, if you had to rank all of them to your knowledge,
Ms. Marvel
to your
number
memory, where
1,
would you put this?
Moon Knight number 2, WandaVision or
Really?
Winter Soldier
Okay.
number 3. I did not Loki that much at all, so that's very low. So I can easily attest to that.
Same here.
But Ms.
Same here. I
Marvel
wasn't
then
crazy
Moon
about
Knight.
Loki
To be
either.
honest, I think I might swap Moon Knight with maybe WandaVision or Winter Soldier. Again, all three of those are kind of tied, but I know Ms. Marvel's definitely one of my favorites, easily.
I'm just trying to think. Moon Knight is still my number 1. Miss Marvel. It's Miss Marvel.
Oh
versus
shoot!
Hawkeye
I forgot about Hawkeye.
for number
Dang
2
it.
and 3.
Oh man.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's tough. It's tough between those two. Falcon and the Winter Soldier definitely come after those two. Loki, I'd say, is at the bottom. WandaVision is probably. Yeah, I'd say it's above. It's above Loki for sure. Because again, I love the build up for WandaVision. The build-up was brilliant, but like the finale just kind of like suffered in the end. I feel it was just like a little anticlimactic, but like overall, no, Miss Marvel is definitely easily one of the stronger installments in the Marvel Cinematic Universe in terms of its TV shows.
Now I remember Hawkeye. Hawkeye's probably number 3. So those are my top 3: Ms. Marvel, Moon Knight, and Hawkeye.
Yeah, same here, just in a different order. But yeah, for all of you that are still with us at this point, what were your thoughts on Miss Marvel? Do you think that it did a great job of introducing this new character? Are you looking forward to seeing more with her and everyone that's surrounding her? Leave your thoughts wherever it is that you can, in whatever comment section that you can. And if you like this review and would like more like it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell to get all notifications for more reviews just like it. And just like that, that's all we have for you today. Tune in next week for our review of Jordan Peele's Nope. Looking forward to seeing you then. Take care.